Hello, everyone. A warm welcome, and thank you for joining our today's session, introducing the Nauru Citizenship Program, the latest bespoke citizenship solution launched by Henley and Partners. My name is Nubar Valieva. I'm Director Private Clients based in our Turkey Istanbul office. And joining me today is Mr. Edward Clark, CEO of the Nauru Program Office. Edward Clark is the Chief Executive Officer of the Nauru Economic and Climate Resilience Citizenship Program, responsible for ensuring the program office operates effectively and to the highest standards. He brings extensive experience in banking and financial services with expertise in risk management, financial crime compliance, regulatory compliance, and governance. He has worked with major multinational institutions across Asia Pacific, including serving as a Chief Compliance Officer for HSBC New Zealand. Thank you, Edward, and welcome. Before we move on to details of Nauru Citizenship Program, allow me to briefly introduce Henley and Partners and provide a short overview of the investment migration industry. Following that, Edward will take you through the program itself and explain the key features in detail. And also will introduce you to very attractive limited offer for program itself, which are very attractive, as I mentioned. So about the firm, about Henley and Partners, who we are. Henley and Partners is the global leader in the investment migration industry. We advise ultra high net worth and high net worth individuals on acquiring citizenship and residence by investment worldwide. So beyond investment migration, we also guide our clients on global wealth structuring, taxation considerations, education planning, and also we have a dedicated concierge team providing ongoing lifestyle and advisory services to our clients. Another very important pillar of our business is government advisory services. We work closely with governments to design, implement, and market investment migration programs. To date, Henley and Partners has helped raise over 15 billion US dollars for governments, including countries such as the UK, Switzerland, Singapore, and many others. Global presence and expertise. As you can see on the map, we have a strong global presence with offices across all key regions. For the majority of the programs we advise on, we have feet on the ground, allowing us to closely control and oversee the entire process. So over the past few years, we have also significantly expanded our presence across the United States, reflecting strong growth both outbound and inbound client demand. So our approach is highly selective. We assess all available programs globally and create a short list that passes our internal checks and balances, ensuring solutions that are robust, compliant, and as risk-free as possible for our clients. Currently, this includes approximately 37 countries and more than 50 residency and citizenship programs worldwide. Please feel free to submit any questions via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will address them toward the end of the session. I will also share my contact details at the end of the presentation, should you wish to reach out directly to me or to Edward with any follow-up questions and inquiries. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Edward Clark, as I mentioned, CEO of the Nauru Program Office, who will walk us through the latest offering in detail. Thank you very much, and over to you, Edward.
Thank you for the warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be on the call with you all. Would you mind just switching over the
Yes, please.
screen? Thank you. Yes, good afternoon, good evening to everyone on the call, and thank you for joining. My name is Edward, and I'm the CEO of the Nauru Economic and Climate Resilient Citizenship Program. I'm going to give you a few insights about the Nauru citizenship program. I'll talk a little bit about what it takes to submit an application, what are some of the main eligibility requirements, a little bit about the due diligence process, but mainly I'll share a little bit about pricing, policy, and that kind of thing. And one thing that I'm quite excited to share today is recently we announced a number of really exciting pricing and policy changes that really positions Nauru as one of the most attractive citizenship propositions in the market. But first off, probably the question that we get asked the most is where is Nauru? What is Nauru? Because it is, in fact, one of the least visited countries in the world. It is one of the smallest countries in the world. So, Nauru is a small Pacific island country. It's part of the Micronesian group of countries, which is, I would say, northwest in the Pacific. It's located right on the equator, so it has very tropical, consistent temperatures all year round. Think Singapore, but without the humidity. In terms of population, like I said, it's one of the smallest countries. It has a population of around 12,000 people. Um, but it is very connected to the Western world, primarily through Australia and New Zealand. So they do use the Australian dollar as their currency. They are part of the Commonwealth. They speak English and they also have their own native language, being Nauruan. So while it is isolated, it is also still very connected, which and particularly connected to Australia, which makes it quite a unique place. And it does have a very interesting backstory if you ever want to deep dive into a bit of a history lesson. It is quite fascinating. Um, and I'll share a little bit about that shortly. So Nauru, as I mentioned, has an interesting history, and it once was one of the wealthiest countries in the world per capita. It was famed for its phosphate resources. Countries like Australia and New Zealand, in particular, their agricultural industries significantly benefited from the rich and wealthy phosphate reserves that were on Nauru. And the island itself and several other islands around similar to Nauru have been mined extensively. So, for a very short period of time, the island was incredibly wealthy. They were able to have their own airline. In fact, the airline still exists today, which is key to servicing a number of the islands in the region. But it does mean they do have direct flights from Australia and also from Fiji. But coming back to the phosphate, unfortunately, due to mismanagement and some poor investments, a lot of the wealth has dissipated over the last 50 years. Now, I guess Nauru is really turning itself around in terms of economic diversification. They're starting to grow their fishing industry, they're starting to grow their tourism industry. And this is really where the Economic and Climate Resilience Citizenship Program came into existence. It is one of these initiatives that the Nauru government are looking to diversify into. Another one they recently announced, which is quite interesting, is they are looking to establish themselves as a regional regulator for cryptocurrency or virtual assets. So it gives you an idea of the way the current government are thinking in terms of being quite innovative. quite forward thinking in terms of how they're actually managing their economy when they now have limited natural resources. And what is driving this is the country is now falling behind from an infrastructure perspective, and they also face some of the most significant challenges from climate change. Nauru is the fifth most vulnerable climate-related country in the world. So they face challenges in terms of rising sea levels, given most of the population live on the coast. They also face challenges in terms of saltwater contamination in their limited freshwater supply. They have challenges in terms of waste management, being such a remote island. Everything is, or nearly everything is imported, and there's not a lot of places for that waste to go. So these are just some of the many challenges that they face or will soon face in the future if they don't start to address them. So that's really what is driving the citizenship program and why we are all here today. So let me tell you a little bit more around about the program itself. Like I mentioned, the program is designed to help raise funds for the Nauru government to help them address some of those critical infrastructure needs relating to climate change. That's why we're all here today. That's why I got involved in the citizenship program because I saw it as a compelling reason to have a material impact on the country. And I think this is something that's quite compelling for potential citizens as well, in that they have an opportunity to have a material impact. Given the size of the country, and the GDP, actually your contributions will go a long way to the development of the island. In terms of what makes Nauru citizenship compelling from your perspective, in addition to having such a material impact on the island itself. Uh, the processing time is incredibly fast. We operate around 3 to 4 months. From a price point, we are one of the most affordable propositions in the market. We have very uh, family-friendly policies in terms of family inclusion as well. So if you ask me sort of what are the two or three things that really make Nauru stand out as a citizenship proposition, it is those three. We'll talk a little bit more in detail around some of the benefits, some of the other benefits, but and we'll go into a bit more detail around some of those policy and pricing perspectives as well. So, the Nauru passport is a politically neutral alternative to travel on. And we've seen applicants already. For example, we had an applicant from the US who obtained Nauru citizenship, being a US citizen. And he wanted the Nauru passport to be able to travel to countries without, um, I guess, um, risk of safety, I think was his perspective for wanting to get the Nauru citizenship. So being able to travel on a Nauru passport to certain countries instead of a US passport was incredibly valuable to him, either for business or for pleasure. The passport itself has visa-free access to a number of key strategic destinations, including Hong Kong, Singapore, and the UAE. We are actively working with the Nauru government to try and expand on the list of countries that we have visa-free access to. I mentioned earlier we have one of the most family inclusive policies. So, what does this mean? So, you can include your spouse, your children, that's standard. But if you actually go into some of the finer detail and you compare Nauru to many of the other programs, you'll find there are many restrictions that are in place. Examples of this will be the age of your children, the age of your parents, whether those children or parents are financially dependent on the primary applicant, whether you can include siblings in the application, whether your children are married, None of those restrictions apply when you want to bring your family along to apply for Nauru citizenship. And that makes Nauru one of the most family inclusive, or probably the most family inclusive program in the market. And given the price point as well, it makes it a very attractive proposition if you are wanting to apply with your family. In addition, we do accept applications from certain jurisdictions, which other programs don't. For example, we just allowed applications from Russia or Belarus. This is on a restricted basis, so I'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. We do accept applications for stateless individuals, and we've had a number of successful applicants go through the program already who are stateless, which again is something that is quite unique about the Nauru program. And there are no, the other thing I think that is quite interesting then about the Nauru program is there are no visit requirements or no residency requirements, no need to visit the island during the application process. So everything at the moment can be managed entirely remotely. You'll start to see some of the policies changing, particularly in places like the Caribbean, where they're now requiring a certain period of time to be spent on the island itself. There are certain countries where biometrics need to be collected, which may require you to travel during the application process. So far, everything is done entirely remote for Nauru, which makes it seamless from your perspective, but also easy from your perspective as well. So, how would you apply if you are interested in obtaining Nauru citizenship? The first thing is you need to work with one of our licensed agents, Henley and Partners being the first agent to become licensed under the Nauru Economic and Climate Resilient Citizenship Program, are highly recommended. It is very important that you choose your agent very wisely. Go for someone that is experienced, has expertise, has successfully obtained citizenship. It can be, I would say, a daunting process. You do need good quality advice. There is a very vast range of agents out in the market, and it is important that you choose or work with the right partners who really understand what you're doing. So I can certainly recommend Henley and Partners in that regard. It's really important that you also work with someone that deeply understands the documentation requirements and also how to put forward the right narrative in relation to your application, particularly if there are potentially some challenges relating to your background. So please, get the right advice, work with good quality agents, highly recommended. In addition, if you do have some complexities in terms of your profile, we're very open to, discussing those very early on or even before an application is submitted to give a sense of viability. One of the things that I strongly recommend for anyone applying is to be transparent in terms of your situation. We do quite detailed due diligence on individuals, and often we find things that have not been disclosed during the application process. So it is better to be upfront and address those upfront. Otherwise, it can delay the application process. So in terms of the time frame, it will take approximately 3 to 4 months from submitting the documents to us to obtaining citizenship. Again, if you work with a good quality agent, you'll find they know what they need in terms of documentation. Once they're submitted, it will generally go through quite quickly, and this will avoid any back and forth from our team when we are reviewing the documentation to make sure that everything is in order. So the licensed agent will submit the application to us. We will do a documentation review to make sure everything is correct. We'll do some initial due diligence on the application to make sure there are no major red flags. Once we've completed that and payment has been made, we will formally accept the application. From that stage, it then goes through to local law enforcement to do some checks, and we also work with a number of third-party due diligence providers who do background checks on the applicants as well. Applicants are required to attend an interview. It typically goes for, I would say, 20 minutes and just ask some basic questions just to align what is in the application, um, what has been put in the application forms, just to validate and also validate anything that we've identified during the due diligence process. Again, that's why it's important to be transparent and upfront with your financial situation, your employment history, um, and any maybe criminal offences or civil enforcement, that kind of thing. Once all of the due diligence has been completed, our team works with the Nauru government to submit a recommendation that goes through to Cabinet, who will make a decision to approve or decline the citizenship. So that process takes approximately 2 to 3 months from when we've received the application through to getting your approval. Once it's approved, then it's approximately 1 more month through to obtaining the citizenship certificate and passport. And only once it's been approved are you required to make your final contribution payment. So, what does it cost to apply for Nauru citizenship? So, at the moment, actually, we have recently launched a limited time offer, and this was done to celebrate the first anniversary of the program. So we've given a little birthday offer to the market, which is a limited time contribution amount of only USD 90,000 for the main applicant, which, like I said earlier, makes it currently one of the most affordable propositions in the market. Now, that pricing and limited time offer is only available until the 30th of June. That means that you need to submit your application before that date. So as long as we have received the application before 30th of June, then we will honor that pricing. So you have 4 months to gather all your documentation and submit it to the team at Henley and Partners to get the process underway. If you're adding on any other family members, it is a cost of 2,000 for any dependents. So that will be children or parents, as long as they're age 16 and above. Again, from a price point, if they're younger than 16, there is no additional cost. The only cost that they will face if they're under the age of 16 is the initial application fee, which I'll talk to in a bit more detail later. If you are including any siblings in the application, then their contribution amount is 15,000 US dollars per person. So again, it's very much focused on family members, being family friendly in terms of the pricing, the way it's structured. And currently the 90,000 contribution amount as a limited time offer is a very attractive price. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that if you are seriously considering. Just for awareness, the standard contribution amount is 115,000, so that is a $25,000 discount on the current contribution amount. Just before I talk a little bit about some of the recent pricing and policy changes that we've made, we do have some basic eligibility criteria for anyone applying. Firstly, you must be over 18 years of age. We expect people to be of good character. And this is really, when we go and do our due diligence, understanding the profile of the individual. We expect that they should have no criminal record, although some criminal record is okay for anything that is relatively minor. So as long as, I guess our threshold on that is as long as the individual has not been sentenced to prison for more than 1 year, then you are still eligible to apply. So minor incidents of discrepancies are okay in that regard. Individuals should be able to pass due diligence checks and, of course, have the financial means to meet the required contribution. We also require police clearance certificates from countries where you have resided for the last 10 years, for over 6 months, and for any country which you hold citizenship of as well. So just bear that in mind when you are applying, that is a required document. So I mentioned we had recently made a number of pricing changes. The first one is the launch of the limited time offer, which I talked about earlier. The other one is a reduction in our application and due diligence fees. So previously, our application fee, the price to apply was 25,000. That has been reduced to 5,000. So a significant reduction in the application fee, which again makes Nauru one of the most affordable propositions. And the reason that we did is we found that the application fee was quite high. Given that the fees are non-refundable, it was putting off a lot of people from applying. So we decided to lower the application fee to 5,000. We actually increased the contribution at the back end so that we could fund ourselves from that, but the limited time offer has then reduced that overall. Those are some technical details. You probably don't need to be concerned about that. Just focus on the headline price. And then the price for any other additional applicant to apply is 2,000 US dollars. We've also reduced the due diligence fee. So for the main applicant, it was 10,000. It's been reduced to 6,000. And for any other dependent, as long as they're 16 years over, it's been reduced from 7,500, sorry, yeah, 7,500 to 3,000. So again, a significant reduction in the due diligence fees for all family members. And importantly, if you're under the age of 16, there is no due diligence fee. So if you're under the age of 16, the only cost will be the $2,000 application fee. No due diligence fee, no additional contribution to obtain your citizenship. We also made a number of key policy changes. So we did relax the eligibility for dependents, which I talked about earlier. So that is removing any restrictions around age, financial dependency, and marriage. And the reason that we wanted to do this is Nauru is a very family orientated place. And when people were applying for, or families were applying for citizenship, we saw that, maybe there were some family members being left out because, they were in employment or they were married. So you couldn't actually bring your entire family along. In some cases, certain individuals were excluded. This didn't really align with the values of the country, so we decided to remove these restrictions and make it family inclusive. One thing I'd like to point out, so even though if, for example, the sibling is married, say your brother or sister is married, that application does not extend to the spouse of the sibling. It is only the sibling that can be included in that application. What has changed is previously a sibling, if they were married, would be excluded from being able to would be excluded from the application, but now they can be included if that applies. So just to clarify that, that is a question that we get quite frequently since we made these policy changes. And the last thing in terms of some of the policy changes was a change to the restricted jurisdictions that can apply. So we do now accept applicants from Russia and Belarus. That is on a restricted basis. What that means is there are some restrictions that apply. So if you are Russian or Belarusian, you must have lived outside of Russia or Belarus for 5 years, or you must currently be a resident in what we're classifying as a tier one country. So that could be US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, or an EU member state. Singapore as well is included in that. So that is either lived outside for 5 years or have a residency permit in one of those countries. The other condition is you must have severed economic ties with either Russia or Belarus, depending on your home country. So those are what we will look at. That also applies to other restricted countries. So other restricted countries would include Syria, Afghanistan, as an example. There are some countries where we don't accept applications from altogether. Those are the UN high-risk countries. That includes Iran, North Korea, and Myanmar at the moment. So lastly, and it's not on the page, but we have recently also introduced some electronic filing provisions into the law in Nauru. So what this means is we will shortly be able to make the entire application process electronic. So that will significantly streamline the application process and make it much easier for individuals to apply. That includes things like being able to accept electronic signatures instead of wet ink signatures, not needing to actually courier the entire documentation pack to the island. So we expect this will save time and money from an application standpoint as well. We're currently working on putting this process in place. It's not yet live, but we will be announcing that in due course once we are ready. So watch this space. And that's it from me. I hope hopefully that's given you enough information in terms of the Nauru Economic and Climate Resilient Citizenship Program. But of course, if you do have any questions, then happy to answer them on the call now.
Well, yeah, we do have a few questions. Let me ask them to you. What about citizens of Haiti? I suppose it's the question regarding the restricted jurisdictions.
That's right. Haiti, while being a high-risk jurisdiction, has no restrictions at the moment. So you are free to apply if you're a citizen of Haiti.
Great. There's another question. Is there a mandatory interview process?
Yes, so I mentioned during uh, the call, there is a mandatory interview that is required for the applicant. So we use that interview to validate a lot of the information that has been provided in the application form. So, for example, if you've said that your net worth is X, in the interview, we try and clarify, what is your net worth? And also anything that we have identified during the due diligence process, we'll also try and validate or understand if it doesn't align with what was in the application form. Examples might be maybe you have a shareholding or directorship that you didn't disclose in the application form that we've identified during the due diligence, and we might just want to confirm that that is correct. So things like that will be covered off in the interview. It typically takes, I believe, around 20 minutes to complete that interview with some basic questions, just confirming information around your background.
Okay, okay. There is another question. For Russia and Belarus applicants, just to clarify, it's okay if they still maintain residence in Russia or Belarus, as long as they have a permanent resident status in any of the tier one countries.
Uh, Technically, yes, but I mean, you'll still be a Russian or Belarusian citizen, so you will have the right to live there or reside there. So yes, there's no restriction on being able to travel there as long as you have residency. It doesn't have to be PR. It can be a different type of residency. Um, uh, so. The key thing that I would think about if you are or do maintain that relationship with Russia or Belarus is the financial ties. So have financial ties been severed, for example? Do you no longer hold a bank account or do you no longer have any corporate affiliations? shareholdings or directorships in Russia or Belarus. Things like that we'll look for as well as part of the due diligence process.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, we have three more questions. Thank you. Three questions. First, will the visa-free or visa on arrival apply to the EU countries, or are you looking to expand this to the EU? This is the first one. If you want, you
Okay,
can answer.
so we would love to have visa-free access or visa on arrival to the EU. Um, I would love to be able to expand this. That is not something that is easy to obtain. So hopefully one day in the future I'll be able to say yes. But at the moment, if you are um, aware of what's going on in the citizenship and residency by investment industry, actually the EU have recently taken a number of steps which are against citizenship by investment. So that will be difficult at the moment to obtain, certainly in terms of the political stance. However, that may change in the future.
Great. The second one is, would a partner as opposed to a spouse be eligible as an additional applicant?
Yes, so uh, it depends what you mean by partner. So de facto relationship is fine, but there are some restrictions on same-sex relationships. So that is not something that is recognized as a legal relationship in Nauru. So that is excluded if that's what you're referring to as partner. But de facto is fine.
Okay, great. The third one, is there a housing purchase or rent requirement?
No, there is no requirement to purchase a house or rent anything. The only uh, I guess, outflow relating to investment in the island is the contribution amount that goes there. Like I said, there is no requirement to travel there. There is no requirement to visit the island at all after obtaining citizenship.
For the second question, by partner, they meant long-term partner as a boyfriend.
Yeah. So, like I said, if it's a de facto relationship, that's fine, um, as long as it's not same sex.
Okay, great. Another question. Can elderly parents be included in the application? If so, what would be the cost?
Yes, parents can be included in the application. So, um, like I said, one of the recent changes we made was to remove any age restrictions or any financial dependency for parents. So previously, the parents had to be financially dependent on the main applicant. That's no longer required. The cost is a $3,000 application fee. Sorry, $2,000 application fee, a $2,000 contribution, and a $3,000 due diligence fee.
Okay, great. Uh, and what about grandchildren? It's my question. Can they be included in the application or no?
Grandchildren can be included after citizenship has been obtained. So that is a post-application approval. So they can't be included in the original application, but they can be added after you have obtained citizenship.
As citizenship by descent, right?
Uh, they can be added outside of by descent. So it
Hmm.
can be any existing grandchildren can be added through the investment process channel or through the investment channel.
Okay, great. Okay, great. I cannot see any other questions. I suppose we have come to the end of our session today. Let me share my contact details once again. and also the QR code that will lead you to our website so that you can get all the necessary information regarding Nauru citizenship program or any other. And also, please feel free to contact me or Edward if you would have any other questions, additional questions and inquiries, and we can answer them anytime. So, anything you would like to add, Edward?
The other thing that I forgot to mention is, and I think it's important for people that are considering applying, is we are based in Auckland in New Zealand as a processing office for the Nauru government. So we are not operating on a shack on the beach. We are operating in a very corporate environment. So your application will be handled by a very professional and very competent team. We are very responsive. So if you do have any questions or inquiries on the application or you are considering applying, work with your agent, but we will respond very promptly throughout the entire process and keep you informed throughout the process as well. So I think that's something that is very important to consider. But no, nothing further from me. Thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure and look forward to receiving your application soon.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today, and please do not hesitate to contact us for further details. Have a lovely day.